here in the city of Fargo. They fought for the United States of America over there in Europe during World War II, and we thought we'd capture some of those stories, give an opportunity to folks that are not able to be here today to understand some of the flavor of what happened there, and some of the fun and some of their memories and reminiscence from a time long ago. Dave, should we start out with you? You want to talk a little bit about how you got them together here and some of the things that are important?
Oh, great. I've been fortunate to be the president of 367 Fighter Group Association for, this is my 8th year. And since the heritage of the 178th is in the 392nd Fighter Squadron, why we're very privileged. We have a couple of members of the 392nd here. Kelsey Card was a crew chief on a P-38 and a P-47 in sea flight.
D.
Well, you're in sea.
That was the best.
You're in sea flight now. Bob Allison was in sea flight with me.
I was in B flight. Weren't we in B?
You're all in C. I'm the boss. I'm assistant flight commander.
That's right.
And I think we ought to start with Kelsey, because he started on the West Coast and went over on the ship and
Yeah, I was one of the originals that went overseas with the 367. As a matter of fact, I started out with out in San Francisco Municipal Airport and moved up to Sacramento when I joined the 367, or when it was formed. And then I believe it was March of 1943, we went over to England and based at Stony Cross, and we were there for quite a while. When we first got there, let me back up just a little bit and let you know what was happening. While we were in the stateside, the pilots were training, and we were flying P-39s. And when we got to Stony Cross, we go out on the field, and what happens? The whole field was lined up with P-38s, twin engines. And of course, all the pilots kind of got all excited and upset over it, and come to find out after it was all over with, they thank God that they had an extra engine to bring them home in the event one got shot out. And of course, we kept the P-38s quite some time through the war. And we, like I say, we started out at Stony Cross and then moved from there to Ipsley. And after the invasion of Normandy invasion, which we supported heavily, and the troops landed, we moved to A2 in France. And I did have a list of all the places we moved to, but it seemed like that we stayed as close to the front line as we possibly could to support the ground troops. And at the same time, we were using the bombs further into France and into Germany. And we went to several different places and wound up all total over to just outside of Frankfurt, Germany. In the meantime, I don't know exactly how many of the pilots that we lost. I lost 2. One of them was in the English Channel. Apparently it had flak damage in one of the engines, and when it cut out or locked up on him, he fell into his wing, man, and they both went down in the channel. And of course, by the time we got them out of there, they carried them to London to the hospital, and their lungs were so full of pneumonia and all that both of them passed away just a short time thereafter. Then I lost another pilot that was only 19 years old, but he was just still wet behind the ears. And of course, I was just a little squirt myself at 19 years old. As a matter of fact, I was in the service for 2.5 years with 18 months over in the European theater, and I went in when I was 18, and I came back out before I was 21 years old. So I learned a lot, and while as a matter of fact, it's just like the old story of the kid that went off to college and thought his daddy was so stupid he didn't know what he was doing. And he went off to college for 4 years and came back, and his daddy done learned more than he did. So that's, I was a crew chief and enjoyed all of it. Of course, when we send the planes out on missions, we'd sit down in our spot that we had for the planes and everything and sweat blood until we seen or count the planes as they come back in. And of course, if we didn't have the right count, then we started wondering who got shot down. But it was, I can see now in older age as to why they got young people to fight the war, because I tell you, my nerves wouldn't stand it right now. It was a trying deal, and thank God that we came through in flying colors and won the war as quick as what we did. So with that, Dave, I don't know what more I might, oh yes, one thing I will add that, of course I had to write I think it's a 3-page letter to our congressman back home for a little trick that I done over while I was at Reims, France, or juvenile court just outside of Reims, France. One of the P-38s that I was crewing, I just got it, and it was an old plane. As a matter of fact, it had, I think, about 75 missions marked on the fuselage, and the heater had gone out in it, and the hangar to repair such things as this, major jobs, you had to taxi them from all the way around the airport and across the highway and across the railroad track to get to the hangar. But it just so happened that the field was all iced in and snowed in. And when I got ready to cross the highway, I had to make a 90-degree turn. And of course, when I mashed on the right brake, it wouldn't respond, and it kept sliding on the ice. And there's 2 trucks sitting on the highway waiting on me to cross, and of course it was the plane just kept heading directly to them, and I had to do something about it. And I goosed the left engine to get a little power to pull me around. When I did, apparently I hit it a little bit too heavy, turned sideways and across the highway and the railroad track through a telephone pole and set it down on the ground. So needless to say that I got rid of that old plane quicker than I intended to. I thought maybe it'd last me till the end of the war, but we had to salvage the plane. It was knocked the landing gear out of mine. But anything else that might come up, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Real good, Kelsey. I was 18 and about to get drafted and joined the Army Air Corps, and as a private went to aviation cadet training program, graduated in Central Training Command, Oklahoma City, and Enid for basic, and Foster Field, Texas.
Where'd you get your curly hair?
Come on in, sit down.
Sit down.
Another 392nd C Flight man is late. Graduated in November of '43, and they made me an instructor. And I went back to Enid to the same flight that I was in. I was 19 years old, instructing aviation cadets who were 19 years old. And built up my time, and finally got the nod one day, very surprisingly, to go to 4th Air Force RTU on the West Coast. Ended up flying P-39s and then P-38s at Ontario. My whole class of about 60 people, 6 of us were selected to go to USAF or Europe, and the rest of the class all went to the Pacific Theater. The 6 of us took the train across country, and the USO treated us so good in Chicago, we missed the train couple of trains there. We misplaced the tickets somehow. The senior second lieutenant was our commander. And then we made it into New York to the port, and after watching the paratroopers jump off the balcony of the officers club onto the sofas below and splintering them in the officers club, we finally boarded the Aquitania, which was a 4-stacker British crude ship. The Queen Elizabeth I was in the pier right next to us, and we pulled out, the tugs pulled us out one afternoon. We passed the Statue of Liberty, and when we got past Newfoundland, we started to S our way across the Atlantic. We got to Edinburgh to see the Queen Elizabeth in the slip right next to us. It passed us, got there one day early, and we had 15,000 on that ship, and we had the volunteer army troops to fight the British crewmen, and there was no way. We lost every match in the 4 days that we were permitted to be on deck, and the other times they would throw barrels overboard, and the quad 40s in the stern would shoot at them to. They said it was to test their proficiency, but I think it was just a big waste. Anyway, there was a P-38 training school over on the east coast at Goxhill, and we were there for about 3 weeks. I swear we never got above 5,000 feet the few missions we flew there. All we did was buzz, go under power lines. They said it was to learn low-level navigation. We did. Never hit anything. The big thing was at night, was to go out and watch the searchlights shining straight up when the RAF took off to do their night bombing over in Germany. They would have these searchlights go straight up as orbit points so they could form up and head east. And just about the time we were getting up in the morning at dawn to go to the mess hall, here they'd come back droning along, and we couldn't count them, of course, but every night it was just that tremendous roar. I joined the group just after they'd moved to France about the end of July, and was in, there were 3 of us out of our class that went to the 367th, and the other 2 names I've been trying to think of for 50 years, and it just doesn't come to me even looking at the complete rosters that we have on our computer. Went to the 392nd and into sea flight, and I just turned 20 years old, and was just a buck pilot in sea flight. And I remember my first mission. We were on a dive bomb mission, and coming home, I lost an engine somehow. It wasn't due to flak, it was a mechanical failure, and we went out through the, no, it wasn't a Kelsey plane.
No.
We went out to the coast, and of course all the Navy ships were backed up there, and here we are with those 2 twin tails right at dusk, silhouetted perfectly, and who was shooting at us? The U.S. Navy. We evaded all that flak and landed safely. A single engine on my first mission, which was hairy. On the first dogfight, I think, was the 25th of August, which is one of our big dogfights, and I was number 2, my flight leader, and we got in a big hairy dogfight. And we called some of the other squadrons to come and help. And my flight leader pulled in on a 109 like this, and really damaged his tail, but he was stalled out, and he went on down, and I was able to drop. We had combat flaps, which we just hit the switch, and I guess they dropped about 10 degrees. And boy, you could turn on a dime for a while. And I did that, and we had 450s and a 20, and I went right in the cockpit. I knew I'd killed him instantly. The only man I know perfectly well that I actually killed. And just blew the cockpit all to pieces. By then I was falling out of the sky too, and picked up my flight leader and came home. We had instances in other squadrons. There was one that flew through some trees in the Normandy Peninsula, and he completely clogged up the 2 air scoops on the sides of the booms. And when one engine would start to run hot on the gauges, well, he'd feather that engine, and he couldn't get above 500 feet because he couldn't pull enough power without the engine really overheating. So he feathered and unfeathered alternate engines all the way and made it home. And his squadron commander was going to put him in for a medal. And another pilot piped up and said, well, I flew through a tree and I had to do the same thing. How come I'm not getting a medal? He said, what you need is a new pair of glasses. So we had a lot of losses. In total, we lost 92 pilots from the year that we were combat ready, and then we lost 8 pilots in training. So we lost 100 pilots in about 14 months, 15 months. Battle of the Bulge came along, and we were grounded there during that stormy winter, and when the air finally cleared, why we were airborne day after day, hour after hour, and just found targets galore. I was leading a flight up to St. Vith. We had 2 1,000-pounders. And we saw this line of German tanks go through this town, and I dive bombed, dropping 1 bomb. It hit this tank square, bounced off and went up, and just scared the hell out of the wingman, who I forget who it was. All he saw was this 1,000-pounder right in front of us. He was coming down to pull out. Well, it didn't go off, and sure scared the hell out of the guys inside that tank, I imagine. But we blocked the road. The only damage I had on the P-38 was getting my left cowl, gear fairing doors shot off during the Battle of the Bulge. And the only damage I got when we transitioned to the P-47 was missing some cowl flaps on the bottom. So I was really fortunate. I was finished my 75 missions in March of 1945, and I was up on a test top. The name of the game was get test top qualified so you can go up and fill out your engineering cards and then go practice your low-level navigation proficiency out over France. We used to scare more horses and farmers plowing their fields, but we had to do something. I got this call from Dynamite, who was our controller, and he gave me my call sign and said, come on in and land immediately. Hot dog, I'm going to the land of the big PX. Come in, did a roll over the field at a respectful altitude, landed, got out of the plane, went to the orderly room, all smiles, ready to go, and they said, go pack all your field gear, you're going to be a forward air controller with a 6th Armored Division. You're leaving at 1600 this afternoon. Thanks a lot, guys. I packed all my gear, and the Army Jeep picked me up, and I went up and had some remarkable experiences with the Army for about 45 days. Got shot at, strafed by 109s, shot at by 88s. Ended up with a war with the 14th Armored Division down on the Austrian border when we're just getting ready to cross into Austria when we heard that Roosevelt had died, and then shortly thereafter we heard that there's been some big explosions over in Japan, and the VE Day had signed, had occurred, and I came back to the group, and we flew practice missions, and Bob and I pretty much confiscated this huge Lincoln.
It was a,
Wasn't it a Lincoln?
it was a
LaSalle.
Cadillac, LaSalle.
LaSalle.
Cadillac, LaSalle.
We got it painted OD and painted the big white star on the side, and he and I used to drive all over the countryside.
Used the Autobahns.
And we had a good time. We lived in a hotel there at Bad Soden,
Yeah.
and lots of good German beer, lots of wine. And finally,
That's enough. Don't tell what was available from there.
finally I got to go home. Flew in a C-46. They were taking all the glider tow airplanes and the paratroop airplanes back to the States. And I stayed in the Air Force. I was in 33 years, retired in 75 from the IG there at Norton, and had a good career. We tied up with the Duluth outfit a couple of years ago down in Oklahoma City, and they invited us last year to Duluth, and Colonel Hagen and Tom Larson and some of the guys came over last year and invited us to the air show. And we of the 392nd are really proud to be here. So I'll turn it over to Bob Allison. He came to the group, fall '44.
Probably.
It was in our glorious,
Early fall, yeah.
in our glorious flight. And,
It seems to me something like that. You want a story like that about when we started and so on? I was a machinist in working for Hughes Aircraft Company in Culver City. And I was on the night shift, and one night, a stock chaser, one who distributes orders and materials for machinists in the plant, came around and he says, "I'm going down and enlist in the Army Air Corps tomorrow. I'm going to learn to fly. Do you want to go with me?" And I said, "Yes, I do." So I had a deferment and I didn't have to go, but I decided to go with that guy because we'd talked this over before. He said there's a little window where we can get in even though we haven't graduated from college, because before that you had to be a graduate. And so we went down the next day or the day after that to Los Angeles to the recruiting office and signed up for the Army Aviation Cadet Program. I graduated from Williams Air Force Base in about February '44. We went, after graduation, through some RTUs, one of which was flying P-39s at Redmond, Oregon. Then to Portland Army Air Base where we had P-63s, another derivative from Bell of the P-39, had faster airplane and different shaped tail, so that's the only difference. We then had got to Santa Rosa and checked out and flew P-38s at Santa Rosa. We had a man with our group of cadets who was I guess he was a student officer, and he had been in the 367th Fighter Group before, and he wanted to get back in it, so he wrote some letters, and eventually all 40 of us ended up in the 367th Fighter Group. After flying B-38s there at Santa Rosa, we went to Hamilton Air Force Base and did a lot of preparation for overseas. We all thought we were going to the Pacific. We got all that kind of gear, light duty clothes for hot weather and everything. Then orders came through and we were shipped to New Jersey. They re-equipped us with stuff for Europe. We got on the Queen Elizabeth I, I think it was, shortly thereafter, and est across the Atlantic, avoiding submarines. Ended up in a place in England called Camp Stoneman, Camp Stoneman, waiting to go across the channel. finally we did get orders, and we went down to an embarkation port, and we got on a Navy LST. And they were moving a lot of communications gear, so I guess the communications officer in charge of that gear was really our boss at that time. We all picked a truck and got on it with our bags. Our foot lockers were coming in other trucks, if we had foot lockers. Got over, I think we joined the group at San Cotan. So it sounds like, it looks like San Quentin, but that's the way it's pronounced anyway. And I remember on my first mission that we were all sitting around on a very rainy day in a muddy area in a tent, drinking watered French wine. And all of a sudden, somebody came to the tent, and I think it was Rufus Dye, came to the tent and says, "Briefing in a half an hour, we're going on a mission." So we all went over, got rid of the wine real quick and went to the briefing. But we had some others. Couple I remember is one in which we still had P-38s at the time, and we were on a high altitude bomber escort mission over towards Berlin. I think it was right over Berlin. Anyway, we were probably at 40,000 feet, and the bombers didn't show up, so the wing commander, or group commander, said, "Let's go home," and he turned us all around. And just about that time, I lost an engine. And I had to feather it, so I was sitting up there way at the end of the group. They were all flying home, and I'm sitting out here as a tail end Charlie about a mile behind them with one engine feathered. I looked over my shoulder, and there were two fighters up there. They looked like ME-109s, but I kept watching them, and they weren't coming after me, so I just kept on droning along with my one engine. Looked back up, and they were coming down, so I turned towards them. And one of them flipped up a wing, and I could see they were Mustangs, so they took off, and I turned around and went on. I started letting down then to gain some speed, and started catching up with the group. And I think when I got down to about 20,000 feet, I thought I'd try starting the engine, and I did, and it started. And so then I caught up with them, and we went on home with no further bad deals going on. I've always resented the fact they didn't leave anybody there to guard me, though. They didn't leave anybody, and I called them and told them I had lost an engine. I forget who was the leader that time. But anyway, the group leader didn't do anything. Neither did my flight leader, whoever he was, and I don't know who it was. And
You were expendable.
yeah, I was expendable. I was a brand new second lieutenant. Anyway, we all got home safely that time. Another mission I recall as being very exciting was that this was towards the end of the war. And I forget what month or anything, I was leading this one, and we went out along an Autobahn towards Berlin, and we ran across the German airfield that still had some Ju-88s on it. Now, I was leading a flight of 8, or a squadron of 8. And left one up, and we strafed that field, and we blew up about 10 or 12 of these Ju-88s. And then the other flight came down and blew up a few more. I lost a good buddy on that mission. And he was he was flying a element lead position, and I called him to form up and started to circle the field a little ways away from it, stay away from the flak, because I knew they were shooting at us by that time. We'd been on there long enough. And but Jim made one more pass at another thing down there, and he got shot down on his approach to the target. And he just kept right on flying into the ground. Jim Colt. Well, anyway, we all got formed up and headed home. On the way, we're out of ammunition by this time, and bombs are all gone. Flying along under the clouds about 4,000 feet. And we're about halfway home, and we're still over German territory. And out from behind the clouds ahead of us came a staffel of German fighters, straight at us, all shooting. Not one of them hit us, and they kept right on going. over. We didn't have a bullet left except, nothing. Nobody had any bullets. We couldn't fire. So probably if we could have turned around and fought them, we would have got some of them. But if they'd have turned around and fought us, they'd have shot us all down. But anyway, they kept on going. Another one I recall is a mission where we were just flying along and going to a target to bomb and strafe. And I was looking at a road over on my left, saw a gun on the road, and it was shooting at us. I could see the puffs of smoke coming out of its barrel. We were flying pretty low, about 3,000 to 4,000 feet. So I went up just like as if on a gunnery range, and that was the target. Made a 90-degree turn towards the gun, and flew down, muzzle to muzzle with the damn thing, and when I got into 300 yards, I pulled the trigger and blew the whole thing up. Must have hit his trailer load of ammunition or something, because it just went up like a 1,000-pound bomb had gone off there. You want some more missions? You got another one?
Certainly.
Which one?
Hey, you want some? No, this has got to be World War II mission. Anyway, another one was where we blew up a bunch of tanks and trucks at a road intersection, and we're just pulling off the target. And right in front of me was a ME-109 going across. So, and again, I pulled in behind him, and he dove for the ground. And I pulled in behind him and made an aggressive attack on him and stayed right on his tail. He kept diving, and he couldn't get away from me. I had to throttle back to stay behind him. And but I was able to, and he was jinking, but that didn't do any good. When I got in real close range, I fired 3 shots. That's all the ammo I had left. I could see him hit his airplane, and he kept on going down and down and into the fog bank. And we did not see him hit the ground, so I did not get it confirmed on it. But I'm almost confident that he was killed, because he had to go into that fog bank, and under it was ground. It was just very thin fog, perhaps 100 feet thick or 50 feet thick, like ground fog is. You could see the church steeple sticking up through the fog there. And I'm sure I saw smoke coming up out of the fog, so I'm pretty sure I got it, but I couldn't get anybody that was with me to witness it and as a kill, so I never got a claim on that. So that was my nearest thing to a kill of the war, of an air-to-air kill. I don't have any other hairy stories right now. I had one when I was a cadet, though. Oh, a P-38 is very critical on one engine, and they gave us a lot of strong briefings and practice on single engine handling. Well, about my 3rd mission in a P-38 at Williams, I was getting ready to land, and I came in on the base leg. You put your flaps down just before you turn final. I put them down, and the outside one went down, and the inside one stayed up.
Oh, nice.
And so that tends to make you roll into the one that didn't come up, and that was the way I was turning. But fortunately, I'm still here. I got the wheels and flaps up going through the single engine procedure, and went off through a whole pattern of AT-6s that were landing on a parallel runway. Got it airborne again, tried the flaps, and found out what it was, made a no-flap landing, and finally graduated. That was okay. That's about all I got to tell you, unless you want to hear some.
Let me ask you.
You want to hear some Vietnam stories?
When you met the German fighters head on and they fired, and you didn't have any trouble standing behind the other guy diving toward the ground.
Oh,
You weren't able to run from those guys? You couldn't dive?
We
or
were
run away from
going
them?
back to our base, and they had gotten ahead of us and were coming back towards us.
So, but the comparison of airplanes, you couldn't
Oh,
dive to the ground and outrun
You
those
think we
guys?
might have been able to outrun them? Well, you don't have time when you're that close to get them far enough ahead so that you're out of
You see
range.
the guys in the
You're gonna-
cockpit.
So they
you're
had
gonna pass
20mm cannons, and
Yeah.
they have even more range than our 50s had.
Well, what we would do in our airplane is we'd pass head to head, and if you don't want to fight, then you gotta try to escape out of there.
Well, all we could do was go straight ahead to escape, and then we just did it. But they were all firing as we came by. I could see the guy in the cockpit of the airplane that passed me. I bet he's really surprised that we didn't shoot. I was always wondering about that, what those guys were thinking.
Well, they may be short of fuel or something
It
too.
was,
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the reasons I was able to overtake that 109 was because of the German fuel that wouldn't let them use their entire, the power capability of their engine. Because the engine in a 109 at that period in the war was a very high-powered engine. It was probably better than the Allison or the Merlin. But anyway, I figured that was the only thing we could do is just keep going. I kept looking over my shoulder expecting them to turn around, but they never did. Fortunately.
You guys both had P-38 training in the States before you went over.
Yeah.
Did some of the guys arrive over there having not flown 38, or did everybody?
Well, the original bunch that went over, trained on P-39s.
So when they showed up,
And
they
that's
were
what,
on an airplane.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about, that when we got to Stony Cross, England, that the field was sitting there with all brand-new P-38s. And of course, we had to have, the pilots all had to go through a training session.
Yeah.
The mechanics and crew chiefs and all were very fortunate because of the fact that you had the same engine in the P-38 as you had in the P-39.
They just had to learn the airframe.
So it was just the fact that you had two engines to maintain instead of one. But the pilots, like I say, they were kind of flabbergasted to see that they had P-38s and nobody had any training. Only I believe our commanding officer, Young.
Oh, Charlie Young.
Yeah, Charlie Young was at that time Major Young. Had previous experience in flying P-38s. Of course, he more or less led the whole group as to how to fly them and what they would do and what they wouldn't do. Of course, in the P-38s, you had a right engine and a left engine, and the propellers went opposite directions.
Counter-rotating.
And therefore, your torque, when you gunned the thing in flight or anything, it didn't want to spin out on you. So it was very unique airplane. As a matter of fact, it was I think, like I say, saved a lot of lives because of the fact that it was a twin engine. But all of the original pilots, after they got trained in it and everything, they just fell in love with it.
As a matter of fact, they almost rebelled when they wanted to change to P-47.
Well, as a matter of fact, it did. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of conversation when we, of course, they were phasing out the P-38, wasn't building, and it's hard to get parts for them, and it's hard
They all went to
to
the Pacific.
maintain them. And that's why I wound up, like I say, with this old one that had flown 75 missions because of the fact that you couldn't get any new ones. You had, this one had been to the depot and been overhauled. But then, when it went to P-47, the P-47 was a tough airplane. You could blow the head off of one of those jugs.
So we're going to talk to the Mike from Dallas Airlines.
As a matter of fact, one of our pilots put one of those 47s through a troop. He was right about the.
It's all like it does. I don't see why I have to go over there. I got
Of
one
course,
going.
this is a radial engine on a P-47, Wright R-2800, and those were some powerful engines. And of course, the torque on them, if you cram the fuel to them, the things, the torque on them would want to roll you. And, but the pilots, after they got into the P-30, the P-47s, I think they fell in love with them just about as much as they did the 38s and seen that they could take a real beating. Chuck, you want to add a little something?
Yeah, to describe the 38, it's about like in size comparison between the F-15 and F-16. 39 was the smallest fighter we had at those days, and the 38 was the largest, wingspan wise.
52 feet.
Was it that big? It seemed like it
Yes,
was.
it was.
Oh, like flying a boxcar, but it would perform. It had no torque. You had your guns in front of you. Well, just like a jet. I mean, your guns were in front of you, and it was ideal. for a gunnery platform, I never had any qualms about it. You knew that if somebody was on your tail, all you had to do was pour the coal to it, pull right turn, and come back with your combat flaps a little bit, and she'd sit there and shudder, and you knew, look over your shoulder, and they were gone. Who made us, we were flying a 109 and a 190 for a while at the end of the war, and somebody made us quit flying because somebody blew a tire on one and ordered a crew chief, I think it was, or somebody to go get him a tire. And they said, we'll solve that problem, nobody will fly anymore German airplanes. Then we got that one to go to the gunnery range. I don't know what that was, a piece of storage, I think, or something. That was whatever it was, they said, you're a pilot, go fly. Go over to the range, run the range. I said, well, I don't know anything about running one. I said, we didn't ask you what you know, just go over and do it. And I think it might have been you that told me that.
He could do it, still down on
So you hit some German airplanes and you just flew them,
Yeah,
put some gas in and flew them.
yeah, we put this high-powered American gas in it, and they were flying on, we'll say, like 40 octane or something, and we put 100 octane in it. And those things would really get to go. That we could not understand.
We had 100
The
octane.
109 and a 190,
Well,
how we ever stood a chance against them.
They were flying using 80 octane, Mark.
Was it
I think it was 80 octane. Those things
whatever they
were-
had to put in it, I don't know. You didn't ask questions in those days. You looked at the fuel gauge, pulled the cap off, stuck your finger in there. If it came out wet, that was it, go. And if it quit on the way, that was your fault because you didn't, there was no such thing as JP4 and all that, so you didn't get the wrong fuel. Now they could. One of those octanes, in the States, we had a wire. In the States, you couldn't go through the wire because you had a lower octane gasoline.
90 octane.
Was that what it was?
Yeah,
Oh.
90.
Did you fly the German airplanes against your own airplanes in practice?
Yeah.
And you liked that German airplane a lot? It was good, huh? Both of them?
Well, I wondered how I survived. That happens every once in a while. Why you survived? I mean, the man upstairs looks out for you. There's no doubt about that. I'm positive in all wars, police actions, and what else is that he's got a very good eye.
Most of your missions were escorting bombers?
You never knew.
You know,
Today, you might fly, this morning, you can fly an escort, which we call a milk run, because they were fighter missions. And then this afternoon, or next week, or next month, depending on the weather, you know, we didn't invent radar. The English did that, and they let us copy it after a fashion. We had a troop snoop. And so one of our boys showed up with, we won't go into that, but what did they call it, a pickle barrel? Maybe.
Yeah.
We'd fly 16-ship formation, and with these bombs, our commander was a classmate of some B-17 guy, and he'd always say, my boys can haul as many bombs as you can in a B-17s. And I said, well, we aren't bombers, you know. He said, well, you just fly a pickle barrel, fly straight and level. And when we had a navigator, no, a bombardier in the group. Yeah, a bombardier. When George said, now, everybody punched the button and it got rid of it. And the flights went like this, you know. Is it, some of them had 2 on, some had 3. I think we had 4 one time, but I'm not sure.
So a formation like that, you drop from mid-altitude or higher?
Yeah, we were in a formation and we had to fly a certain airspeed and a certain altitude. Whatever the leader flew, you were bound by something or other that you stayed with your leader regardless.
And believe it or not, they were still doing that in Vietnam by a different name.
Are you talking about the
They went,
That sky spot.
Vietnam went from a 4-ship to 3-ship, and for alert, they went to 2-ship. That was the big difference. The only thing was they forgot, and they sent a Nellis gunnery pattern to Vietnam. And you could tell them, now please mix it up. Well, here's your headings. Here they come, one right after the other. Didn't make any difference what headings you give them or anything else.
You got any more
I should
questions?
say that's another war. I, like being a fact, you get the shaft every once in a while.
You were a forward air controller also?
Yeah. I spent the last, 6 years in the Air Commandos. And by virtue of, let me see, where was it? I got stuck in it somewhere along the line.
You can find this to the 392nd.
Okay, 392nd. Now, you really want me to tell on you, or you just want me to?
Tell us, tell on.
Bobby, when they made you a forward air controller, that was right at the end of the war? You were only with them 45 days?
No, that was, by virtue of something I got it in Vietnam. Don't know what it was. Let's see. Oh, my first mission on 38 was with Danny Noble. And when we landed, he said, real good mission. He said, I'll see you, I'm going home. That's my last one. Thank you for joining me out there. And the next one was with Sling. And that was the last time I got to fly number 2 position. I was with Sling and we got bounced. And Sling says, that's real good formation. I said, you weren't going to get away from me. I made sure of that. He said, you know, you stayed in there. But I never did see the enemy. I was too busy watching him because he was going flipping, and I did everything but blow up the engines from full idle to full bore.
You know you're on national TV now, don't you?
Good.
Okay, be sure to tell the truth.
I did.
Okay.
But out of the 367 fighter group, we had the 392nd, the 393rd, and the 394th. Of course, all of us in the 392nd, which is the best squadron of the
And
organization.
Seaflight was also.
Two flight in the 392nd. Top notch out.
How many guys were in the 392nd? How many pilots were there at any one time?
I don't know, about 30? About 30.
About what we
I
had,
think, I think-
airplanes.
25 airplanes?
I think the most we ever had at one time was 32 pilots. And,
And during that, you talked about losing 100 guys in 18 months or so, that was out of the whole wing. Is that
Out of the whole group.
out of the group, yes.
Well, a wing as it is today was consisted of 4 groups in those days. And a group was made up of 3, a fighter group was made up of 3
I meant to
squadrons.
say group.
Yeah, we were part of the 100th Fighter Wing. Our group was.
19th TAC, 9th TAC,
Mhm.
So, and out of the 392nd, out of those 100, I suppose you had about a third, huh? You lost about a third.
Yeah, we,
I believe we had, my memory serves me correctly, 27.
We got one here that got shot down. It was a PW for a while.
in the year,
Yeah.
we need to get him in here. Talk.
392nd.
In
Yeah,
Clyde,
397?
Clyde didn't hear? Oh, I thought I saw him. Oh, sorry. That was the first mistake I made today.
And then, how many missions were you, did you have a contract for how many missions you expected to put in before they leave you?
Until you got shot down or no?
Or
Four,
was it
actually,
to
or
be a
something.
fact or
So
something?
75, wasn't it?
Did we have a look?
Yeah, 50. When they first started going home was at 50. And then when you got 50, they said, well, nice going, boys, just keep it up.
We're gonna change it.
75.
I got 60.
At the end of the war, at first, the original group, when they accomplished 50 missions, they came back to the States. And how long they stayed in the States, but I don't think it's too long, but I understand that some of them, they went to the South Pacific.
We didn't have any left when I was there. On mission,
But as far as the crew chiefs were concerned and all, they talked about the 75 missions,
Yeah.
75 missions for the crew chiefs.
Able for it to be, don't
Without a boarding, without a boarding,
It was my fault he
you
got sent
were
home.
awarded the
We
Bronze
supposed to
Star
be
Medal. And I believe it was December of 44 that my plane had accomplished the 75 mission.
Now can I get out of the seat and go get a drink?
Are you copying all this stuff?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chuck. Thank you.
Okay, Tom.
When the guys would rotate back to the States, then what, would they put them in training, or what kind of jobs do they have back here? Normally, when you get a guy up and running in combat, checked out, you know, he's safer and safer and more efficient. But of course, the guy didn't want to get shot at forever, so at some point, they rotated him out.
A lot of ones are RTU instructors.
And pass that on to you guys.
That's it.
Well, we were scheduled to move out of France and go to the South Pacific on a ship when the war was over.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they
That's
dropped
why
a
we
nuclear weapon before
thank-
that and it ended the war.
Give them hell, Harry, for dropping them.
And they wanted the 38s in the Pacific because it had good long range.
Yeah.
Two
Right.
engines over the water all the time.
And they had a good record against the Japs.
So as the war in Europe wound to an end, then they basically took all your supplies away and sent them to the Pacific.
That's probably what happened.
And the gang was on two ships headed for the Panama Canal, and the war ended, and they diverted one into Newport News and the other into, I think it was New York.
We were on our way down from disbursement area at Reims, France, to
Lucky Strike.
right, Camp Lucky Strike at Reims, France, down to Marseille, France, to catch a boat to go to the South Pacific, which was going to be something like a 63-day boat ride, and which I think everybody was not happy over. But anyway, our orders were changed by the time we got to en route to Marseille, and orders were changed to come back to the States. And then what made me happy is we were coming home for a leave and then reassemble at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And en route from New York down to Atlanta, Georgia, where I was going to be dispersed from for my vacation, the point system was lowered from 95 to 85, and I had 87 points. And you talk about somebody particular death, I was. I had no desire to stay in, even though at Fort McPherson, Georgia, they tried to recruit as many men as they possibly could to stay in.
We sure needed crew chiefs, Brad, because I remember going back to Luke Field and we had to crew our own airplanes to fly.
Is that right?
Yep.
When they finally disbanded the 392nd, was it the same time the other squadrons were disbanded? They did
The
a,
whole group.
That was the damn Avery, wasn't
and
it?
where was the group at that time? When they closed it?
There's only on paper, everybody is scattered.
And scattered, going home on leave and
Yeah.
everything.
When I got back to Fort Dix, he said, "You want to stay in or get out?" I said, "I'll hold my hand up to volunteer." I said, "How soon can I go home?"
They
So I went home. They didn't ask me if I wanted to go to. I thought that was where they were. was
No, we had
Fort.
4 people that had all the histories and all the paperwork to Seymour Johnson in North Carolina. And I think it was in November of
Jake
44.
Polk sent me my combat film and my Form 5 from somewhere. I don't know.
You stayed there till the last very end, didn't you?
No, I came, no. I met you in England on the phone, remember?
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
We did?
Oh, that was our flight leader going home.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right.
You got your film back, your combat film?
Yeah,
They gave it back to you?
yeah. And all I did was tear the left-hand side of my Form 5 off, which was the mission, names of the missions and where they went. And the line bar, which is on the right-hand side, still got, that's part of it now, a little sheet like this.
I got mine.
Now they got a
Yeah.
Is, in Diefendorf here?
Yeah, I'm right here.
I mean, excuse me,
No?
Devers. Clyde
No,
Devers.
no, we, not on.
Well, I thought I saw
Is
Clyde
he-
in the hotel.
Because Clyde, I guess, was one of the first ones that was shot down. And when he bailed out, his right hip and leg hit the horizontal stabilizer and crushed his leg. And of course, they had to amputate it, the Germans did, and they traded him back, and was Clyde was sent back to the States.
He got shot.
And that brought on more training and as to what speed, as to whether to go over or under.
Remember when I told you?
At slow speed,
I don't know how he got
tail
back.
out, you hit the wing and come
See, when I
back.
joined the
And
92nd,
at a higher speed,
Roof was there.
I don't know, it was 260
then he went home not too long.
miles or something.
You know, a month, 2 months,
You
something,
went
I don't know.
and you,
After
tail
I got,
out, you tried to go over. But I think
He went after,
that saved a lot of boys'
our
legs,
illustrious
you know.
leader.
But
Boothroyd was the only one I remember hitting the tail when he went out. That was very close to the end of the war, because he was gone for more than a month and he came back to the squadron. The war was over.
Well, John Lyon hit 47 at the state rider.
He was right where the swing one there, right near the same day, I think it
across the
was.
line.
We lost a bunch that day.
It was a busy day crossing the Rhine.
Yeah.
And
We
we
had
had,
across the Rhine, we had
That was bad and
a
still.
little area ground, boy, the
They
flag,
made a bunch of pontoon bridges and smoke and all that kind of
the
stuff.
flag was really.
Of course, the Germans concentrated everything there, and they had, the sky was black with flak, and they didn't have any airplanes left to fly, that's all.
Well, we put 4 ships continuous over,
Remagen Bridge.
yeah, and then put over, 4th Armored Division CCD.
That's
Oh,
right. The general came back and.
the captain that made
Thanks,
this,
yeah.
a general in Vietnam. Abrams,
Yeah.
does he tell us where he left it? 6x6 full of wine or something. Most generally it was wine. We always thought it was gonna be cognac or something like that, but it was generally wine.
Third Army was good to us. They used to liberate a bunch of goodies up there and,
when they
No,
go
that
down,
one.
and he always ordered 2 beers because he drank his first one real fast, he never would put it down. That Calvados, you just sipped on it. It was worse than any martini you've ever had.
could be substituted for lighter fluid.
Well, yeah.
How would you know? You didn't drink it on the
I didn't drink it those days either.
I wasn't old enough to
That
drink.
water in mine was
I wasn't old
it
enough.
tasted like vinegar.
Not that-
Oh, can I tell the story about going to Paris?
Let's hear a Paris story.
Oh, we lost him going through Paris. Somehow or other, he went through the city and the rest of us didn't. Then when we went back in November?
Yeah.
October, November, when Gabby was, that was right after Gabby took over the place.
Right.
We went to Paris on something on a 6x6 that was 90 degrees below zero. I remember
Yeah,
that.
we wrote that old six.
And that's when he didn't drink it. He was dive bombing the champagne corks.
We went to the Lido that night.
Yeah, we had to drink the champagne.
I learned how to drink that night.
Corks.
That was your downfall,
That
didn't
was
it?
my fault.
So the first drink you had was champagne over there. And how old were you?
I was 20, going on 21. But it got wet out that night. Paris had been liberated and things were almost back to normal. We got passes to the night club, the Lido, just like the Lido in Vegas, the girls wore
It was a girly show.
skimpy feathered,
Came right out on the walk, just like,
just like the girls in Vegas.
And the only difference was they charged $20 a bottle for champagne and what month, 2 months before they give it to you.
They give it to the Germans
Yeah.
free.
But it said reserved for the Wehrmacht on the bottle, we didn't care. Well, it was reserved for as long as they gave it to us.
Money didn't mean much in those days.
Oh, while we were at Cuban Court outside the range, NCO club that we had built, about a 40 by 60 building, we threw a big party and sent 2 or 3 trucks into town to pick up women to dance with that night and all. And I think we got a whole truckload of champagne. And you talking about some green stuff, that's, boy, I'll tell you one thing, it was good going down, but the next morning, it had the best of it. That stuff, I'll tell you what, will kill you real quick. I never had a hangover in my life as bad as I had that next morning. But they tell me I had a great time.
It sounds good. That's what they told me after that Paris visit to the Lido Club.
We had some lighter,
I was sick for
lighter
10
moments.
months.
You never knew what mission you were gonna fly until you went to briefing, and, we did what we were supposed to do, and, when we came home, we partied. When we
When we went on R&R, we
went off, goofed off on R&R, why, we did what you do on R&R, and, you live your life to the fullest, and we had a lot of fun.
Well, you more or less had to, as a matter of fact, being shy and everything, and didn't know whether he's gonna live from one day to the next, you might as well live it up and do when you had a little bit of free time. Because you didn't know whether your next mission was gonna be your last one or not.
From day to day, we did have a lot of free time. When we used to go, we had collected some rifles and things, the Royal Army things from the Germans. And we used to go hunting in the woods for rabbits. We never got any, we did get some rabbits, but not very many. There was very little life left in those French woods. It all been cleaned out by the Germans and the French for something to eat. They were starving, they had to have it. So they just,
We found that animal dump there back in Juvencourt, and we liberated a whole bunch of 30 caliber tracers. And we still had a lot of crows. They weren't eating crow yet, but we used to fire those tracers.
Yeah.
That's the crows.
so we spent a lot of time.
Practice our lead, you know.
Hiking in the woods and shooting those German rifles.
One of the guys in the sea fight though had a ferret, which was his pet, slept at the foot of his cot every night. And in our spare time, we'd go out in the woods and put the ferret down a rabbit hole, and we'd find the entrance, and with a pillowcase, we'd hold it over, and pretty soon, boy, thumpity, 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 thump, and one of the rabbits come flying out of that old hole and right into the pillowcase. One time, the old ferret didn't come out. We had to build a fire and fan the smoke down there to get him out. So old Jack Adams could speak French, and he'd take all these rabbits in the pillowcase down to this French family down there, and sea fight had us laundry done free for the whole time we were.
Yeah, it was pretty
The
good.
sea fight, as long as we were doing for it, as long as that old ferret did his thing.
That's where we took the 88s apart.
Yeah.
Took those things that looked like chocolate, or no, not chocolate, but licorice sticks. I mean, you light them and they go like a snake down through.
That's powder.
Yeah, well, we knew that, but I mean, we didn't know how to go.
We did a lot of foolish things. Mines back there, and how we
I had a foolish thing happen one night. We'd get those shell casings from the 88s, and I had an empty one sitting at the foot of my bed for the guys to use for an ashtray if they'd come and visit me. I didn't smoke then. And one night, there was one of those that was filled with powder sitting there.
Oh, Lord.
The guy came in and he flipped his ashes in that thing, and we're sitting back there talking, but pretty soon we see it smoking. And the guy that jumped into action was Jim Colt. He grabbed that thing, took it outside the tent, and threw it away. Just as he got it outside the door, boom, all that powder blew.
nobody ever got hurt.
Nobody got hurt.
We used to get jerry cans full of gasoline and an empty ammo can to wash our ODs up.
Oh, yeah.
We dry cleaned our ODs,
Dry cleaned.
raw gasoline, and
Yes,
throw them outside on the rail in the sun. That was our dry cleaning.
And I hope you didn't get called for
Couldn't-
emission
couldn't-
while they were dry.
You're right, couldn't wear those stinking
Because
flying
you
suits all the
learn
time.
slightly if you did.
But we had some good time. Nobody ever got hurt on our off-duty
Not that I know of.
experiences that we know of.
I fell off the sled when they were taking a picture.
Well, yeah.
I didn't get hurt, but I fell off from it.
We used to have, not the wheeled tugs as we know them, the cleat tracks with the cats
Yeah.
that we towed the airplanes with. In the wintertime, when we put all the pilots on a whole bunch of sled-like things and haul them to the airplane because of the
six fives and the Jeeps couldn't get the traction.
Yeah.
And old Chucky fell off, Bill and Charlie fell off once.
They were doing it, snapping the whip.
Good thing you weren't in front. And all the rest of them would run over you.
Who's that, Curtis?
That's Curtis, Jack.
You wanna tell a war story?
Come on in,
Come on in, Jack, tell.
Rolling? Are you rolling?
Yeah.
come on in.
Well, somebody called and said that Larry Bloomer was being interviewed down at the radio station.
Oh,
We didn't have a radio, but there's one over on that clock.
Did they blow the station up yet?
Larry Bloomer is, he's a native of this area.
Barry Bloomer is a 393rd ace, but he's lived up at Kendrick in North Dakota here.
He was a flash in the pan, he got all his on one
He
mission.
was up here last year. He's got 5 airplanes in 5 minutes. And we've got a 6th airplane if one had pulled in front of him on his way home.
He had plenty of ammunition, didn't he?
How long was an average mission? What was the flight time?
Escort missions were long. We usually had 1 bomb and 1 175-gallon tank, 175.
I believe it's 170.
Yeah. They last almost 5 hours.
Oh, you had that one over Berlin was 7 something.
Yeah, almost
That was
eight.
the longest one.
Yeah, well, you had two
Two tanks.
Is that the one that I was sailing, Charlie, on Lost an Angel?
That could have, I wasn't there.
I flew Bradley's airplane, the heater went out, and you totally yanked the things off the windshield, put them up your gloves. You had gauntlet gloves. And I had to unzip them, and so I could get the heat up my gloves.
P-38 was probably the coldest
But you had
airplane
a
ever built by a U.S. manufacturer. We put on those huge sheepskin boots, you could hardly get on the rudder pedals. And the sheepskin goes in the helmet and the gloves, and the heater had 2 openings right down here between your feet, which before, we got to about 33,000 feet above the B-17s, and of course, those guys are freezing back there. They had electric suits finally. And cold, scratch
Sure, we were cold.
a patch on the windshield, the seat on it, was frosted up. That was miserable.
P-47 didn't do that. It was nice and cozy.
Yeah, thank God we never got too much height.
So it was 33,000 a lap? 33,000 was the
I was
average?
only out of 5 escort missions in the P-38. And with the 47, we escorted the Martin B-26s, and they bombed from 12 to 15, so that was very comfortable altitude, us being at 17.
Then we got the
Very nice.
26s to escort.
And then we had to go
They
almost,
let us in.
we had to go about 50 inches to keep up with them, with the A-26, which is,
Yeah.
you know, the B-26.
No, back to A. You know why it's back to A?
No.
In Laos. Laos wouldn't allow any bombers in.
Oh,
So they changed it back to the A.
Yeah, you're right, you're right.
We had,
There aren't too many of them around anymore.
what do you
There's
call
one
it?
at the Beaver County Museum.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean,
Vietnam.
ones, yeah.
That one looks
Yeah.
viable out there.
How about oxygen? You must have had oxygen too.
Oh, yeah, always had to go with oxygen. We had throat mics for a while, and then pretty soon we really graduated to get a mic in the oxygen mask.
But they weren't pressurized.
No,
No.
the airplanes were not pressured.
No,
Do you ever have trouble with guys in the bends?
No.
Not
no,
that we
you
saw.
had your oxygen mask on.
We had
Great.
pressure demand oxygen, but it's not a liquid oxygen like you have. It was just in tanks in there.
Just a green tank, yeah.
Yeah, we had to wear it on takeoff and landing after Pinky went in on
Yeah.
takeoff somewhere. He didn't have his mask on to burn his face.
Always coming home, they let down a little 7,000 feet or so wide. You see the old oxygen mask come off and the smokers were lighting up. Always had that cigarette.
Speaking of oxygen, I took off on a mission one time, and the line that leads, the oxygen line that comes into the cockpit, there's a little fitting on it that broke off, and the pipe broke right there, and the oxygen all came into my cockpit. This sometimes causes a terrific cockpit fire, flash fire in the cockpit, but I was lucky and it didn't happen. When I landed, the line chief came over and he wanted to know why I the board, and I told him the thing broke, you know, he wouldn't believe me. He said, "You kicked." I did not kick. I kicked him in the face. I was just as interested in getting that airplane to combat as he was. And he really made me mad. But he was bigger than I was, or I'd have got out and beat him up.
I remember the
The
first,
line chief was a big guy.
He was.
he was our line chief.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Big brother.
because when we got the DFCs, he was, he got something. And, he
Well, he
was
should've
in a
got
while,
something.
he
He
did
had
in a
good
while,
nature.
crew chief or something, you know, I mean, I don't remember, but, you know, he was telling us about wanting to get there. And while we still all standing there at attention and everything, and he came out and he said, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a long time." Everybody said, "He really does know, doesn't he?" We didn't believe it for a while.
I remember the first P-47 flight I led was very uneventful. We just went over and dropped our bombs, dive bombing. I usually fired a burst in a P-38, I forgot, in a 47. But on the way home, I decided we've got to fire these 850s to see how they're harmonized and how many, what the tracer load was. It was usually 6 to 1. So we circled about 6,000 feet and found this old farmhouse up in the middle of nowhere. It looked deserted. I think it was. I hope it was. But we just made one pass, zeroed in on saying those 650s. We leveled that farmhouse with just one pass. But those 850s just, oh, terrible.
I was sure happy to have those 8 when I was facing that flag gun. I really don't know to this day what kind of gun that was. But there was brown smoke coming out of its muzzle, like puff, 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 about that. About every 10 seconds or 5 seconds. It must have been a manually loaded gun.
Well, the best one of the whole works was when Lundberg and that bunch came over at one, well, that's when we got a fearless leader to he flew about 8 missions. One day he said, we asked him how he liked it. He said, "Oh, I like everything," but he said, "What are those white balls coming up at me every time I'm straight?" Well, if you haven't found out by now, there's no point in telling.
Old Scrappy was, Bloomer was in the 393rd, and he had a brand new second lieutenant taking him up on his first mission, and Scrappy asked him, "Hey, would you like to see some flak today?" And the kid looked at him wide-eyed and said, "Oh, yes, sir, I'd sure like to see some flak."
Yeah.
Well, they went on the mission and dropped their bombs and hadn't seen any flak. And on the way home, the kid called up and red flags and said, "Sir, we haven't seen any flak today." My God, that's right. And they went back, found a target, got the hell shot out of him, lost a man who evaded finally, came back home. Little Scrappy really caught hell from the smart commander.
Yeah, you see
But
flag.
the guy saw his flag. That's a true
I
story.
didn't hear that story.
And all we had was a 4
You're
channel
withholding
VHF.
that.
B channel was squadron frequency. What was A? Was that group frequency?
I don't remember.
We had a group frequency.
D was emergency.
That's when, I don't know, but we didn't have a choice of
We
four.
called it
Forward
dynamo.
and forward channel.
We had the group frequency.
We only had 4 buttons.
We had a 9th Air Force common, we had group, we had emergency, and I forget what third one was.
We had one we could match up with a bomber, so we had stuff.
Well, yeah, but we knew that ahead of time.
But
They
they didn't
changed,
lease that
they
there.
changed the crystals.
I can't remember.
They changed the crystals when we had this.
Yeah, I think that was-
Yeah.
Don't have any of that hot communications gear you've got now.
It's not much different. We got a few more presets, but
Yeah.
sometimes you
You
can't
still
even
use buttons? Which buttons?
rotate a little.
Rotate
No, you just tune it in the frequency, aren't you?
Well, when the R-34 came out, that was
set for.
greatest thing in radios. We didn't lose any more on takeoff. You know, before they always made you change frequencies on takeoff. And the R-34, you could just do it without looking down. And the horizon stayed out there in front of you.
That weather, how good is that bird in the weather?
38 was terrific. Now, 47s, we scattered them a few times. You could be sitting there on somebody's wing, and all of a sudden you get fixation. You didn't know whether they were gonna turn, or you
I
were
don't know
turning, or
what
what.
I would prefer to fly with either one of them in the weather. I think they were both about the same.
We used to get above, but the forecasts were, yeah, cold sea, cold south. We were above overcast, undercast most of the time, and hoped we'd find a hole in the target. And usually did. Usually got rid of our
Yeah,
orders.
it's amazing how many times
Come home.
there was cloud cover all the way out there, and all of a sudden at the target it was clear.
Yeah,
In the same way coming home.
so we were lucky.
What we did, our recovery procedure was to leave the target on the reciprocal heading, head for home. When you got about where you thought you were, maybe 100 miles out, you start letting it down until you see the ground. And when you see the ground, then you leveled out and flew to your base. You always try to hit the ground or see the ground before you got home. That was just a standard recovery procedure.
You had an area where you let down where you knew the altitude of the ground.
Well, rough.
Not really, but
It was,
we had maps.
you know, hilly.
And he was the expert with the map. He'd break through an overcast, and here's the target over to the left or to the right, so many degrees, and away we go, and it always is the right one. I was lucky I knew what country we were in.
Coming home, just like we used to do here in the States, is when you really didn't know where you were, well, we called dynamite our how about a practice steer dynamite, you know?
Practice
Every
steer.
practice, they give you homing, you know,
They're
10,
still
9,
doing
8,
that
7,
on
6,
the
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, steer.
They're still
Practice
doing
by
that.
foot, why would you go to that heading right away?
Still doing that in the UK. They've got a system over there, all you gotta do is press the mic button once and the guy will come up and say, tell you where you are and where you ought to go.
Yeah. The British really had the system, yeah.
It
What
was-
do you think, Tom? We've just about explored all the,
I'm sure there's many, many more, but this is sure.
We're short some people here.
yeah, Northwest only has about 2 flights a day and then 3 maybe, and they come in 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so we'll probably get flooded here in a while, but,
Saturday night after the banquet, might be something. And the story gets that.
I'm quite sure that there'll be a lot of stories.
Well, we sure appreciate you taking a little time here to share some of the stuff with other people.
It's kind of fun, we probably would have been doing this anyway.
So we're only telling you the fun parts of it, we aren't telling you the problems. Like
I
having,
wanted to just tell him the scary part.
well, we had a problem in the Marines, getting wood for the stove.
Yes.
well, that's true.
We cut down,
But we didn't have any problem of getting champagne there.
no,
You could get-
that was a necessity. The heat was.
You could,
Well, you can get that champagne with a truck
you could
load
get
there.
rums for $1 a bottle if you took them an empty bottle.
Well, we were in the forest, the Marines, we had to get out and cut our own trees.
Of course, I was fortunate at Greens, you're talking about wood, we burnt oil and gasoline.
Yeah.
Different color.
You popped out of the stove.
You're not the one
Yeah,
that
but
went up
somebody
again.
from the-
No, that was just a few tenths down from me. That's what cost us the gas and oil mixture.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I could kill them boys for doing that. They would kill us with it. We had a safe deal. We had it where it would just slowly drip, you know, put a 5-gallon can out back that with a copper tube would run in and a little faucet that over into the stove.
It was cold that winter too.
Oh, let me tell you one thing, it was miserable. I slept in my fleece line
Yeah, the winter,
clothes.
the Battle of the Bulge was the coldest winter they'd had for years.
Some of the stoves, hot belly stoves,
That's
used
what
to
we
get
ordered.
almost white hot.
That's right.
And the room, even though that heat rated up, the room was so damn cold that one side of you would freeze and your
Oh, yeah.
blood off, the other side would bake. So the side toward the fire was, you were bare, and the other side you had everything you possibly could.
You had a big room, that was why, our little room with all the people in it, we kept each other warm.
Well,
We had double decks, I don't know, well, the room wasn't any bigger than this, wasn't it was that big?
You didn't have double deckers, did you?
Hell,
I
yeah,
don't remember ever having it.
No, I don't remember.
yeah. Jim was over, Jack, hey, right in the door,
Not any place that I was.
hey, Reeves.
One on top of the other, no, we spread out. They were all spread out.
Well, let's not press this.
One more question.
Argument.
I heard a story about a donkey animal, fuel tank. Is that out of the 392nd? What's the story on that?
Well,
No.
The donkey, you don't feel that.
Somebody transported a donkey suspended in fuel tanks at Mount.
I don't think
So I
so.
think that was Bloomer,
We can't haul that.
393.
Our fuel tanks weren't big enough.
Well, they cut holes in it for his legs. His legs
That
went
was
out the bottom.
Bloomer, that was Bloomer in the 393.
You remember a story like that?
Yeah,
I never heard.
he told it last year, Duluth.
No.
He's probably telling it on the radio right now.
What did he want for the donkey?
Bloomer, you
you know, Bloomer.
He's like Jack Adams in the fair.
He was on a, when he left Duluth, he came here, you all met him last year.
Jack took that ferret on a couple of missions with him. Of course, I didn't fly too many missions, but he took the ferret with him anyway.
You talk about the fuel, the other thing, our CO, failed, he went over to the hangar and picked up a plane and failed to refuel. They went on a mission and ran out of fuel and had to land in, behind the line. And the cowmaster, and one of the other pilots came in and carried him fuel back, landed, they refueled, and got both of them back out of there. And, just a freakish deal there, and they were very fortunate to get that plane back home.
Bruce Carr did something like that once, didn't
Yeah.
he? He landed, picked up a pilot that had to force landing.
But we've, like Dave said, is touched on a lot of stuff and all that, I forget which, who is it, he lives down in South Texas at, on the P-38 that,
Davis?
Bruce, Bays,
Bays was my pilot, Bays was. But anyway, he got about 2/3 of the way down the runway and decided that his engine cut out or something, or he avoided it and slid off the end of the runway. That plane turned in over end, upside down.
Jake Wolf.
Jake
That was
Lewis.
well. Jake's supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And,
He wouldn't fly 38s again.
no. But I could see why. Of course, he was very fortunate that he got the crane over and picked it up so he
I'm
could get out.
finished telling stories.
He was pinned in. And
I did that
was
one
sitting
back
there on his side,
over
upside down.
And I took him down to Bad Soden, and we went to, then I got the L-20, and we went back through Jarney and to Reeves, and then we couldn't go any further with the L-20, so we got the F-1, the 100F that he brought, and went down all the way to the Sherbrooke. And one of the few days that we'd ever had clear weather in Germany. And those fields were all built like steps at 40,000. You could look at them, they looked just like giant step top, all of them, all the way. So at Chatteroog, Schmott, which is below Schmott.
Snowball.
Schmott, and the other two on the other left-hand side was the other step to that. Etain was the next one on the right.
Yeah. The Third Army moved east by the 9th Air Force combat engineers were right behind them with their bulldozers and their PSP. And when we were gonna move, why, they told us at the briefing, have your duffel bags packed and stack them here, and you flew your mission and landed at the next base, and the advanced element would take care of you, and hopefully by that time, 6x6 with all your worldly belongings was there, so you could bunk down that night. And that's the way we leapfrogged all the way till the end of the war. And our longest spell was the winter at Guberford, thank God, because we had concrete runways and pretty good barracks, and and things that keep us occupied.
Lots of woods out there.
Lots of woods. Ammunition dumping
Ammunition
place. Lots of champagne.
Amazing we didn't blow it.
City of Reims with, actually had a couple movie theaters that we had, we got straight one night. There was a German Ju-88 outfit stationed there before we recaptured
They
that
came back
airfield.
to reclaim
And
the
they came back to, they knew where all the billets were and everything, and they came back one night, just as the movie was letting out, and heard this tremendous crack, and when they made one pass, like 20 millimeter, went under the head of a sergeant in the 393rd. He was on his bunk sleeping. The 20 took the pillow right out from underneath him and just scared the hell out of him, tore up the tent. That was the only damage that was done.
Their service and sacrifice on the 50th anniversary, the end of the Second World War. The Dynamite Gang, whose achievements in the European theater of operations were rooted in the principles of discipline, honor, and courage, is the trunk from which the 178th Fighter Squadron and the 119th Fighter Group have grown and flourished. May each new leaf remember the old roots which gave it life and strength. The brass one is still being made in the foundry.
Yeah.
And
Let's get one of you other guys, 267. Vern or somebody come over here and hold this up. Let me get out of the way.
then if we can get anybody who would like to, members, to come on over and throw a little dirt in there.
Let's get some of the guys.
Anyone, we got 3 shovels. You bet.
This is the tree.
Oh, how nice.
Well, it's something they can remember for a long time.
How nice.
You bet.
Ready, Betty?
Can you see that flag going? Can you get that flag? I got it. Shovel dirt?
Shot up and take a picture.
You'll have to pretend you're
What do you do when you sell it? Got a blank.
Come on, let's get up there.
You have the same problem.
No, you. Yep.
Whether you think it or not, that's okay. You want to get fixed and get
Guys, stand in front of this thing here. I know, relax.
Got something better than my cane.
We'll see how it turns out.
Turn that damn camera all along. Anybody else want to see?
Not me, I don't have any rank.
You get Colonel Hogan.
One line each step.
Anybody else want their rank?
I just got out of getting.
You never know.
Yeah. We never mentioned it. Like the first time. Well, the second time, but I don't remember. Oh, I didn't even graduate. Yeah. Oh, you were? Oh, I'm on the beautiful. Because I never meet the school. Yes. Well, she will be in what town? Will I be doing?
All righty. I forget which Johnson. The secretary's name is Johnson. He cut it out. Good. Wives were always jealous because Bruce Carr could just take his wife because she was a nurse on commissions. He'd take her on weekend cross countries.
Every car touched it.
She was just about to get a T-33 ride, and they canceled. But a week before that, she got the T-51 ride, and we went up over the Grand Canyon, and I took her up on the deck, zooming right out over the canyon. She went, oh! You know, you go from 100 feet to 5,000 feet just like that. Because I made a couple of spirals.
Ah.
But she got it right.
Ooh, that's a nice cool drink.
I'm with the North Dakota Air National Guard, yes, sir. And I was working with Colonel Hogan until about a year and a half ago. I was the commander's secretary for many years. He's the wonderful man. I love him. Wouldn't have won the Hughes Trophy or...
I was bitching about not bringing my jacket this morning.
You're slobbering. I asked